in the last class, or is it fine?
No, sir, it goes fine up until now.
Where you, are you able to locate some resources online for this course? Did you do a search on what type of things are available on the internet or something? No.
Yes, sir, I tried for the stochastic geometry, but I was not
Mhm.
like, there is no single resource where everything is explained clearly. So I have to
Yeah,
like
yeah,
refer
that's
different
correct.
sources.
Hmm. So, I mean, generally, you would find two classes of resources. One, which is very mathematical in nature, including the textbook that I had shared.
Yes, sir.
So, once you get, once we discuss a concept in class, and what you can do is you can go back and check that relevant section from a theoretical standpoint from the textbook. I mean, of course, at this stage, it will be a bit difficult to. To get all of it, because I think it needs, multiple courses on stochastic processes and measure theory, and if possible, some advanced probability. But at least you would get an idea of what we are discussing. Right?
Mhm.
The other class of resources that you would have are these papers and tutorials, which might be available online. Right? So, as I discussed previously in our previous classes as well, that throughout our course, what we would be mostly interested in are applications of these theoretical results in these wireless networks, right? So, as and when we get into, let's say, more detailed, nuanced approach to modeling these networks. For example, after your mid-sem, we would be going to, we are going to model these vehicular networks and users located on roads and so on, right? So in that case, we would need other models of stochastic geometry, right? So then we would be going back and seeing, okay, what are the theoretical developments present from that perspective, and again, we will not be focusing on the exact derivations, but rather their applications on modeling these networks. Yes, Aditya, you have a point. You are saying that some videos are available on YouTube, but they are not exactly same. So I think there is a video which is quite long one, in the sense that it's about an hour long, right? And that's available. It has a title called "Modeling and Analysis of K-Tier Heterogeneous Networks." So it takes, the concepts developed there starts from a point which we have still yet not reached. We'll take couple of classes to reach there. Aditya, you were mentioning some other video, or am I getting it correct?
Yes, sir, I was talking about the same video.
Yeah, right. So it's, I think, Harpreet Dhillon or someone like that. So anyway, that's an important video as well, and I'll be sharing that that with you all as well. But since we have not reached at that point yet, since we have not yet modeled a single tier network as of now, right? So we'll go into those modelings in the next from the next class itself. What we will rather do today is finish up some basic properties of Poisson point processes, just a couple of them, and we will see some examples, or we'll do some hands-on, let's say, problem solving to get a greater grip on the calculations that we will be dealing with later on in the course, right? So we'll discuss these things for about 45 minutes approx. Then I can share with you the quiz. Okay, I'll just share with you the questions, and you can have the quiz today.
So,
Yeah. Yes, Soradip.
sir, two things. First
Yeah.
thing,
Mhm.
that from next lecture we need MATLAB open in our terminals, right?
So it would be best if you always have it open. Okay. In case everybody has MATLAB terminals ready to use, then whatever we develop during the course, in case you are having some doubt, I can just, uh, start the MATLAB and demonstrate it. Right. Sometimes it's not readily apparent when we will be using it, but on the days we will be using it, for sure, I will be informing you beforehand.
Okay, sir. And about that,
Mm.
for MATLAB, other than the wireless communication, do we need any other specific toolbox?
So that's a good question. In general, no. So I think there is a communications toolbox that should be fine. Um, I think there is a signal processing toolbox. You might be needing that as well. But I don't think anything else. There is a symbolic toolbox. Yes, you would definitely need the symbolic toolbox.
Yeah, that comes already with the wireless tool.
Right. So then I think it's okay. We are good to go.
Okay.
Hmm.
And the other thing was, sir,
Hmm.
yeah, can you give us an example or an intuition when the path loss exponent is more than 2?
So, for example, you are dealing with a very highly or very densely blocked environment, right? So, we remember that these two came from this fact that when there is nothing blocking our transmitter and receiver, we are just propagating. I mean, the wave is propagating without any blockage, and therefore the power is decreasing per unit area as 1 by distance squared, right? In case we do not have any sophisticated model to emulate this large scale fading, in case such blockages occur, and you want to emulate or you want to model such propagation using simply the path loss exponent, you would be choosing or you would be intuitively thinking, okay, in case of blockages, my received power decreases by an amount which is greater than just 1 by d square. 1 by d square is just simply the impact of increasing surface area of the sphere where we are observing, right? In addition, there are, if there are some additional obstacles, or in fact in our wireless propagations in on earth, so whatever we discussed was free space, right? So depending on the frequencies that you would be transmitting with, it interacts with some let's say air molecules and so on. So these things impact how it propagates as a function of distance. And as we saw, that 2 is absolutely the lower bound for omnidirectional transmission, right? So in case of blockage environments, you would get something like that. So 3GPP models, which are generally built by large scale, let's say, uh, uh, experimentations, they recommend that if you are below a certain, let's say, critical distance, which within which you can assume that you are not really blocked, you are probably in line of sight or something, they recommend to use a certain path loss exponent which is closer to 2. But beyond this critical distance, they say that use a modified path loss model which is rather closer to 4, so 3.54 or 3.6, something like this. In case we would be doing our mathematical calculations, we would be saying it's 4 because sometimes power of 4 is easier to integrate. But in general, it's higher than, I mean, much higher than when you what you get in line of sight. Okay, is this convincing, or
Yeah,
as an
okay,
example?
got it. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. Okay, understood.
Okay. So today we will start with a couple of examples, and the first one that I would be discussing about is called Slivniak's theorem, and it's not a mathematical theorem. In fact, when I discuss what it is, you would be thinking it's not really a big deal, right? Okay, let me just state it first, and we will discuss the nuances of it. So it's called Slivniak's theorem, right? So it comes Slivniak's theorem brings us back to a couple of discussions which we were having a few classes ago, that of marked point processes and also of palm probability, right? So palm probability deals with conditional probabilities conditioned on the on the event that there is a point of the point process located at a particular location, right? And marks refer to probabilities of some properties of the point process, either as seen from a point or in general. I mean, it can be the nearest, I mean, how many points are within a circle. This can be a mark as well. It can be the power transmitted by one of the points and so on, right? So Slivniak's theorem states that for a Poisson point process, uh, remember that in Poisson point process there is independence between all the points, right? Slivniak's theorem states that for a Poisson point process, since there is independence between all the points, conditioning on a point at x does not change the distribution for the rest of the process. Okay. So let me just write it down, and then we will elaborate on what it actually is. Okay. So it states that for a Poisson point process, let's say phi, since there is independence between all of the points conditioning on a point at some x. So this is a location. It does not change the distribution of rest of the process. Right. So this is again valid only for a Poisson point process. So if I give you let me introduce you from the perspective of a counter example. Okay. So suppose we are dealing with a point process which contains exactly one point. Okay. In our previous, I think the first class we discussed about we discussed a point process which had two realizations. One of the realization had 2 points and the other realization had 3 points. So let's discuss another process. It's a point process, not a Poisson point process, but it consists of 1 point, exactly 1 point in all realizations, right? Let us assume that this point in a particular realization is distributed uniformly inside a circle of radius r, right? So what is happening? It's we are taking a ball out of that bag and we are throwing it randomly in this circle. Right? So this will be one realization of this point process. There will be another realization of this point process. Let's demonstrate it like this. Okay. The axes are hardly important, so we can delete them. Let's call another realization of this point process like this. Okay, where this x or this point is located exactly at the origin. Okay, right. So in this example, if you are observing some property of the point process or the distribution of the rest of or distribution of the point process, for example, the property can be how far this or what is the probability that there is this point x within a radius of some r which is smaller than capital R, right? So in our example, this larger guy is radius is capital R. What is we are interested in a probability distribution of the event that there is this small x or red x located within small r of from the center. Okay, so the event that we are interested in is x belonging to a ball of center 0 and radius r. Okay, so in case I condition on another event, let's say this is the event which we are interested in, let's call it E1, right? If I define another event which is called conditioning on a point at x vector without loss of generality, in this example, let us call this x vector as the origin. So let x vector as the origin. Okay. Now, if I condition on the point being at x vector, it changes what would be the probability of event 1. So that means that if I consider the probability of event 1 such that x is present at, let's say I write it like this. It's a bit non-conventional way to write it, but let me write it like that. This means that x is definitely present at 0 0. Okay, so let's call this x0. So x is definitely present at 0 0, right? The probability of event E1, right, is definitely 1, right? So when we condition So if I had not conditioned on this event that x is belonging to x0, my probability of this event E1 in general, right, this red x, in fact when it could have been anywhere, my probability of this event E1 would have been some pi r square by pi r square, right? It's the probability that this red x is falling inside the smaller circle out of all the possibilities, which is the entire circle, and the probability is simply the area of the inner circle divided by the area of the outer circle, which is the area of the, let's say, interesting events divided by the area of the or the set of the total events, right? So this is simply r square minus r square, r square by r square. Okay, I hope this difference is clear to you. It's a very simple, straightforward example which just says that for this point process, if you condition on a point to be definitely located at a location, it changes the probability distribution of the rest of the process, or probability distribution of any particular event that concerns the rest of the process. What Slivniak's theorem says is that for a Poisson point process, it is not true. It means that if you are conditioning, or if you are looking at certain events of a Poisson point process, let's define a Poisson point process. Let us try to draw two realizations of this. Okay, so let's call, okay, so what I am interested in is an event which is the nearest point from the origin. Okay, which means that, okay, I have a realization of the Poisson point process, which is this one. So this is basically realization 1. Right. In this case, I am interested in the event. What is the distance to the nearest point from the origin? So which is this guy, right? So the probability distributions across all realizations of this particular property, or the probability distribution of the nearest distance, or the distance to the nearest point from the origin, does not change even if you condition a point to be located at some point. So without loss of generality, let's say that the point is located at the origin itself, right? So if I am still interested in the nearest neighbor distances of whether there is a point located at the origin or not, or nearest neighbor distances from the origin conditioned on the event that there is a point located at the origin, it does not change whether you condition on this event or not, right? Let me give you two more points before we proceed. The first one being that what this allows us to do is allows us to take this origin anywhere. So for example, if I am interested in the probability of an event such that a point is located at a given location. So as I mentioned before, that my assumption of this point to be located at the origin is without loss of generality. What it means is that it can, this conditional event, this guy, works even when this guy is not the origin, which means that let us condition on the event that there is a point located at this blue location, right? If I condition on this event, the probability distribution of the rest of the process still remains the same. Okay, by rest of the process, it means the entire point process minus the point. So for example, if I give this same notional, let's say, example, if this red x, instead of being a single point, if it would have been the subset of the Poisson point process, which means the Poisson point, this point process consists of many such red x's within this circle, which is a subset of this Poisson point process. And if I am still interested in this probability of this event E1, except that point located at the origin, which means is there a possibility that there is a point, or there are certain number of points outside this circle of radius small r. In case of the single point process example, it would have been 0, right? So if I am interested in this event E1 bar, so the probability of event E1 bar given So E1 bar is what? It is the probability that outside of B 0 comma r there is no point. Okay. So E1, well, it's E1 itself actually. So E1 means no point outside of B 0 comma r, right? So the probability of E1 given x belong to x, some x belonging to some x0, it is 1, which means that if I am saying that this point belongs to the origin, for sure there is no point outside the 0 comma r ball. This property is not true if it was a Poisson point process, which means that if I had conditioned on any of this point belonging to a location, any property or the probability distribution of that property would not have changed. Okay. What this allows us to do is this allows us to put conditions on the locations of these nodes, which in our case would be either users or base stations, and from its perspective observe the rest of the network or the probabilistic distribution of the rest of the network, while knowing this fact that my assumption that there is a point at this location does not change the distribution. Is this part clear, at least intuitively? I mean, mathematically, it can be thought of removing an infinitesimally small area corresponding to, let's say, this ball of center 0 and radius epsilon, where epsilon tends to 0. And since the distributions of all the points in non-overlapping regions are independent, which means rest of the region except this infinitesimal, whatever happens there doesn't matter or doesn't depend on whatever is happening inside this infinitesimal. This means that any property as seen from a point is the same whether or not we condition on having a point at that x from that point process phi. Is it clear?
Sir, I have a doubt on this.
Yes, please.
In a homogeneous point process also, it's independent of the origin, right? Means wherever we look, properties are the same. So how is this different from that?
Right. So a homogeneous point process might not necessarily be a Poisson point process. Okay. So Poisson point process simply says that, I mean, a homogeneous point process might be some, let's say, regular distribution of points in a space. A Poisson point process specifically characterizes or specifically needs this element of independence across disjoint regions. Right, that brings into this fact that it's completely random what is happening inside of this infinitesimal space and what is happening outside this infinitesimal space. Right. So for example, if you are looking at a very large area of this R, suppose R is very high. Okay, a single point. Okay, think about this example and answer me this, that if consider R to be very large, capital R, and I am thinking about a point process which is governed by a single point, okay, which means across all realizations it is this red X, which is uniformly distributed. Remember, it's uniformly distributed within this circle of radius capital R. Right. If my domain of observation is limited to this capital R, yes, is it a homogeneous point process?
It should be homogeneous, right, sir?
It's homogeneous, right?
Yeah.
But here Slivniak's theorem won't work because it's not a Poisson point process.
Okay.
Right? Does it give you the counter example you are looking for? Say I give you an homogeneous point process, which is not a Poisson point process, and hence Slivniak's theorem will not hold true. I mean, this theorem is quite simple. It's important only because it allows us to add a node to a point process at any location we like, such as the origin, or at a fixed distance from the origin. It's not necessarily the origin. Okay, it can be anywhere like this blue guy, right, without changing its statistical properties.
Yeah, okay, sir.
So why will it be important for our analysis? It will be important for our analysis because suppose you are looking at a user located at the origin, right? So I am interested in all the properties of, let's say, base stations, or for example, sum of all interference powers which I am receiving from all the other base stations and so on. So suppose my serving base station, which is this blue guy, is located at a point, and suppose my interfering base stations, maybe with some with some association rule, I am always connecting to this blue guy. My interfering base stations are located somewhere else. It can be closer than blue one, it can be farther from blue one. In cellular networks, it's generally farther from the blue one. But if you think about, let's say, Wi-Fi networks, if you are going to a shopping mall and you are connecting to a Wi-Fi network of a coffee shop, even if you move closer to some other let's say outlet, you are still probably connected to that coffee shop itself. So this is in that case, right? So there can be an interferer very closer to you than the one which you are connected to for your Wi-Fi access, right? I am interested in the sum of all the interferers coming from this set of interfering locations modeled as a point process, right? Or modeled as a Poisson point process. In that case, I will say that, okay, one of the points is actually not contributing to my interference, okay, because this is my useful signal. All the red points are contributing to my interference, okay. However, if I am observing the statistical properties of this sum of interference, I will say, or what I know from Slivniak's theorem is that if these x's, right, are forming a Poisson point process, then conditioning on the fact that there is a point located at this location does not change the statistical properties I'm observing. Okay, this is only valid if it is a homogeneous Poisson point process. I think this also gives you good motivation to understand why this theorem is important. It's not a very complicated one, but it's an important one. Okay. I'll give you some other examples or other properties of point processes before we go into some hands-on examples. So the second one that is important for us is called independent thinning. This again will become very important when we are discussing wireless networks. So which means what? Suppose there is a point process given by this set of red crosses, right? If you are going to each of this point or each of this red cross, so let's still draw the axis just for reference. So what you are doing is you are still going to each of this red cross and you are saying that, okay, I will keep this red cross with a probability, let's say p, and you are removing it with a probability 1 minus p, which means even if you select, let's say, p equal to 0.3, which means 1 minus p equal to 0.7, which means you go to each of this point and you do an experiment, probably a coin toss with a biased coin which comes up heads 0.3 or 30% of the times and tails 70% of the times. You do this toss, and if the toss comes up heads, which means with a probability of 0.3, you keep this point, and with a probability of 0.7, you remove this point, right? What independent thinning says is that if you do such a keeping and removal of points independently across each other, what you will result, or the resulting point process, which means all the points that have been kept in this manner, of course it will be less number of points now because you have removed some of them. The points that remain form another point process, which is also a Poisson point process with an intensity p times lambda. If this had an intensity lambda, this is now p times lambda, which means in your parent point process, if there was 1 point every, or in let's say if there were 10 points every square kilometer, in this new point process, which is thinned, right, it will form another Poisson point process with intensity 3 points per square kilometer. Not only that, the points which have been removed, right, 70% on an average, or roughly speaking, points have been removed. The location of those points which have been removed constitute another Poisson point process with intensity 0.7 times lambda, or 1 minus p times lambda. So when I say Poisson point process, it means all the properties that are inherent to Poisson point processes hold true, which means that if you are looking at any compact closed set in this parent point process, the probability that there are n number of points here, number of points equal to n, was simply given by e to the power minus lambda times the area of this set, lambda times area of this set to the n by n factorial. Now if you are looking at the same set here, the probability that there are n points inside that same set is still Poisson distributed, but now with a parameter of p lambda. Is this part also clear? Any doubts, concerns regarding this independent thinning?
Sir, also regarding this, about the theorem you mentioned earlier, this Leibniz theorem, if we add points in a Poisson point process using that theorem, and if we repeat that process also for some time, won't the intensity change because we are increasing number of
So
points?
there we are not keeping on adding points according to some stochastic process. It's just one point which is being added to a given location. That's it. So the Slimnax theorem is not really holding true if you have conditioned on a set of points located at certain set of locations.
Okay, got it.
So this one, try to prove it at your home. I'll give this as a homework, which means you have to prove that in case you are doing an independent thinning of a Poisson point process, which means you are going to each of these points and keeping and removing them with certain probability, independent thinning results in another point process, which is also a Poisson point process. So try to prove this at your home. Why this would be important in our case? You would be saying that, okay, if there is a user located at the origin, I am interested in interfering base stations. The total location of the base stations, maybe they are given by red x's, but maybe all of them are not using the same channel. They might be using one out of, let's say, in a very simplistic case, one out of two different channels. So the channel which I am using to get my services, I am experiencing interference from not the all of the base stations, but only a fraction of the base stations which are actually using that channel or actually transmitting at that same time to a user in the same channel. So the set of interferers from my perspective is not all the red x's, but a thinned version of the actual point process. Okay. So I mean, there is nothing much more to it. So let me go to my next point, which is of the similar nature, but it goes the other way, which is on superposition. And this one, I would like you to work it out yourself. I mean, let's do it right now together. So what does superposition mean? Superposition means, suppose you are having, let's say, a mobile phone with a SIM card of, let's say, Jio, right? So Reliance Jio has some towers installed at these, or let's say base stations installed at some towers located at this blue axis. Okay, and you are interested to know the probability that there are certain number of towers within a certain location, which means you are interested in the probabilistic distribution of the number of points within an area. Let's model this as a Poisson point process. In that case, it's very straightforward. If you are looking at a compact closed set A, the probability that there are n points inside that compact closed set is Poisson distributed according to the Poisson point process model. Now suppose instead of this blue x's, you have an independent process, which means suppose your phone, instead of having a Jio SIM, also has an Airtel SIM, right? So let's call that we have an Airtel location of towers, right, given by this red axis. Okay, now suppose you are doing some video download and you have data connectivity in both these SIMs, right? and you want to use that connection, which is actually giving you the better download speed. That means you want to connect to the one which gives you, I mean, it doesn't matter which service provider you are choosing, but it only matters that whether it is able to give you a good service or not. So actually, in that case, what you are interested in, not actually whether the cross is blue or red, but what you are interested is in rather what is the total number of these x's, right? Where was the total number of crosses around me, or the probabilistic distribution of the crosses around me. Okay, so suppose I am asking you this question, that if these blue x's are distributed according to a Poisson point process, let's say phi 1 with intensity lambda 1, right? And these red crosses are also distributed according to a Poisson point process, let's say phi 2 with intensity lambda 2, right? What I would be interested in are, if I was somehow colorblind, or in this case if I didn't know which x, or if I didn't care which x I am getting my service from, I am interested in all the set of x's, which is actually phi 1 union phi 2. Can I say anything about this combined point process? Okay, is it, I mean, naturally the question is the resultant process also Poisson? If it is Poisson, then what is the intensity measure of it? Okay, so intuitively, can you tell me what it would be? I mean, what do you think? Can you guess?
It would be a Poisson point process also.
With intensity measure
lambda 1 plus lambda 2.
Right. So that is something which I would like you to get your hands on, let's say, working out experience, because we will be doing these kind of calculations throughout our course. So let's, so what I exactly want from you is that now find out the probability. Suppose I am drawing a compact closed set A, right? What I am interested in is the probability that within number of points within A is, let's say, some n. Okay, so if the number of points are n, what are the possibilities of the blue and the red points? If I am looking at only the blue points, right? So number of points inside it can be from 0, 1, 2 until n, right? In the same case, if I am saying that within that compact closed set the number of points are exactly n, I am trying to calculate that probability that the number of points are exactly n. In that case, naturally, it becomes a dependent event, which means that the number of points of the red point process becomes n, n minus 1, and in this case 0, right? So these are the possibilities in which the total number of x's inside this set becomes exactly n, right? So separately, this is also the case when the number of points of the union of red x's and blue x's is n. Similarly, for each of these cases, the number of points inside the blue and the red x's is n. The probability that there are exactly n points is the sum of such probabilities, right? So if I try to write that the number of points, so if I say that this is the sum of all cases, that the probability that phi 1 of A, remember that this notation represents the random counting measure, which means the number of points located inside of A of point process type 1 or phi 1 is actually some n minus x. That necessarily means that phi 2 of A is x, and we want to do such a sum where x can vary from 0 to n, right? These are the all possible cases. I mean, it will never happen that this is n plus 1 and this is minus 1. We know that there is no possibility of minus 1 or something like this. So it doesn't go this way further and it doesn't go this way further. So these are the only possible cases where x varies from 0 to n. Whatever x is, in order to get, or in order to establish that there are exactly n points inside that, the other point process need to contribute the other n minus x cases. Okay, Now, since phi1a and phi2a are independent of each other, since I am assuming that these Poisson point processes are independent of each other, the probability that this n minus x and x are uh, belonging to this phi1 and phi2 would be the product of these probabilities, right? So can you help me try to write what would be the probability that there are n minus x in phi1? Yes,
Sir,
Vaibhav, you.
A to the
Yes.
power minus lambda 1 times area of A
Mhm.
and lambda times area of A to the power n minus x,
Right.
n minus x factorial,
Mhm.
and then e to the power minus lambda 2 times area of A,
Mhm.
lambda 2 times area of A to the power x by x factorial.
Right. So this is something which these type of calculations you would be dealing with throughout the course. I mean, naturally, you would try to bring out all the things that are not dependent on x, right? So this one comes out, right? So just interrupt me in case I am doing something not correct. So whatever remains inside, which is the summation of x goes to 0 to n. Okay, what do we have? We have lambda to the power n also coming outside, lambda 1 to the power n. We have inside lambda 2 by lambda 1 to the power x, because this is lambda 1 to the minus x and this is lambda 2 to the x. What else comes outside? Something else comes out is mod of a, or the area of a to the n. Yes, so this we can write it as lambda 2 mod of a. Okay, so mod of a of n minus x and mod of a of x becomes mod of a of n. So this is area of a to the n, which comes outside, this to the power x by n minus x factorial into x factorial. Okay, so again, does anyone know what this evaluates to? Yes, no? If you do not know this, I had given you a tool in the last class of how to evaluate these things. Does anyone remember what it is?
Sir, is this the binomial?
Yeah, it's similar to the binomial one, but not exactly.
sir, yes, we can try Wolfram alpha.
Yeah, so you have to try it out in Wolfram Alpha. So do you want to try it out? Or do you want me to show it? Okay, let us do it together. Okay. So what do we have? Let me first stop presenting and then probably present my entire screen. Okay, so we have Wolfram Alpha, and what I want to find out is the sum of something to the power x, right? The sum of, let's say, a to the x divided by uh, n minus x factorial and x factorial. So x factorial multiplied by n minus x factorial. Okay, and I want to do this sum over all x, which goes from 1 to n, right? Hopefully this evaluates. Yes, it does. And some a to the x by x factorial into n minus x factorial. Is it the form that we have? A to the x n minus x factorial into x factorial. So it comes to a plus 1 to the n minus 1 by n factorial. So use this to find out what would be the resulting expression. So
Sir, but
general,
there are limits.
sorry,
Limits
again.
of the summation.
Just 1 second. Did I put it from 1 to n? It should be okay. I put it from 1 to n, from
I
0
think
to
that's
n.
why that is
Yeah.
that -1.
Right. Okay, now it works. So a plus 1 to the n by n factorial. Okay, so a plus 1 to the n and n factorial. So let us go back and see what it is. So a is our lambda 2 by lambda 1. So we have lambda 1 to the n mod of a to the n e to the power minus lambda 1 plus lambda 2 area of a, and we have lambda 2 by lambda 1 a plus 1 to the n by n factorial, right? Okay, now it starts to make sense. So we have lambda 1 plus lambda 2 into area of a to the power n e to the power minus lambda 1 plus lambda 2 mod of a by n factorial. Oh, sorry. Okay, so that is something which we would have wished to derive, which is if there are 2 point processes or homogeneous Poisson point processes, then superposition of them results in another another point process, which is also a Poisson point process with an intensity given by the sum of such of individual point processes, and this of course continues, which means if you have set of 3 point processes realized on top of each other, their superposition leads to another Poisson point process. Okay, so at this point I will give one more I'll not discuss the remaining property, but let me discuss a rather related interesting example. Since this example I thought about it just now about this Reliance, Jio and Airtel thing, so let me give you a related problem to work on. Okay, so if you are still in that situation where you are a user located at this origin, right, and you are interested now in the strongest signal, as I mentioned in this previous example. So in the previous example we were actually not calculating which is the closest this blue point or red point, right? We were only interested in knowing how many points are located inside an area. But suppose now we are interested in that in that very fact, which is the most or powerful signal, or which subscriber is giving me the most powerful signal, right? Remember that if there is no fading, right, the power that I am receiving from my nearest blue point is the transmit power, some constant which dictates the path losses and etc. The distance to the nearest blue point to the power minus alpha, right? The other one, which is the power that I am receiving from the nearest red point, is my d1 to the minus alpha. Let's call this d2. So d2 corresponds to the nearest point of phi 2, and d1 corresponds to the nearest point of phi 1. Okay, what I am interested in, and again this is something you should equip yourselves with because we will be using this methodology throughout the course, is the probability that a random variable x is greater than another random variable y. Okay, how do you calculate this? I mean, in general, how do you calculate it? So if I tell you, if the tell you to calculate the probability that a random variable is greater than a certain value, right, you would simply use the CDF of that random variable, the CCDF in this case, right? It's greater than certain value. Suppose both sides are random variables, then what do? Suppose you know what do you have with yourself is the PDF and the CDF of these random variables x and y. So what do we know are the PDF and CDF of x and y, what you have to calculate is this probability. How do you do it, or how would you proceed about it? In your past, in some courses, you might have done probability that x minus y is greater than 0. Find out what is the probability distribution function of x minus y and just use the CDF of that. Yes, but a way to do it is, if you are trying to calculate the probability that y is less than x, which is the same thing, you would use the CDF, or you would use the probability that y is less than some x, which is a fixed quantity, assuming that x is equal to x. So this is the conditional probability that y is less than x, given x was some x. You take an expectation over all x. Does it make sense? So what we are actually trying to do is evaluating the CDF of y at some x and taking an expectation for x over all x. Why this is important? Because we are interested to know that if you are located at the origin, what is the probability that you will be actually connecting to a blue tower than as compared to a red tower, which means we are interested in the probability that k p1, let's say the blue towers are transmitting with a probability of p1, the red towers are transmitting with a probability of p2, right? So k p1 d1 to the minus alpha is greater than k p2 d2 minus alpha. So at this moment we have not considered fast fading, and I will come to this explanation a bit later, that while associating you do not really worry about fast fading. We average out all the fast fading and do our association based on the maximum average received power, which means we associate with the base station which gives us on an average the maximum received power. For the blue guys, it's this left hand side. For the red guys, it's the right hand side, which gives the maximum among that set or that point process. So you see that the left hand side and the right hand side are random variables. Why? Because d1 is a random variable and d2 is a random variable. Now someone, can you please tell me what is the CDF of d1 and CDF of d2? We did this in the last class. Yeah, Vaibhav.
For D1, it was 1 minus e to the power minus lambda pi x square.
Lambda 1 pi x square, yes. And this one is
For
simply e to the
second way
minus. You are correct. So accordingly, we have the PDF as well. So the generic PDF for DI, so I is either 1 or 2 of x is anyone?
lambda 1 pi or lambda I pi twice of x into e to the power minus lambda I pi x square.
Right. So if at this point you know what is the distribution of d1, what is the distribution of d2, what is the PDF of d1, and what is the PDF of d2, can you try to find out this probability, which will give you the probability that you are actually connecting to a blue tower as compared to a red tower. In wireless communications or cellular network terms, this is termed as the association probability, which gives you the probability in case you have multiple sets of base stations or multiple sets of service providers, the probability that you will be associating to one of these as compared to the other one, right? It can be generalized as well. You can think about the blue points representing a macro base station and the red points representing a small cell base station. You can think about the blue points representing UAV, which means wireless communication access points mounted on top of unmanned aerial vehicles, and the red points representing the location of the base stations on the ground. What you will be interested in before even you begin to characterize what is the performance, what you would be interested in is what is the probability that I am associating to one of these possible options as compared to the other, right? Which means that if you are suppose associating with the blue one, let's say 90% of the times, and the red one 10% of the times, when you derive your performance metric, which is either your data rate or your something, uh, signal strength or something like that, you will be experiencing 90% of the times that performance metric as if you were associated to the red one or the blue one, whichever is which, right? So this in general gives you a framework to calculate probabilities of some property of one of the point process as compared to the other point process. And since both of them are random variables, we would be dealing with very regularly calculating probabilities of one random variable being less than or greater than the other variable. Okay, so since we have 5 minutes now before, let's say, I give you the quiz paper, which is a very short one, it will take probably 15-20 minutes max. I'll give you half an hour to upload it, but a couple of steps from here. So what we are interested in is the probability that d1 is actually less than, so k goes away from both sides, so it will be p2 by p1 to the power minus 1 by alpha. Remember that alpha is positive, so if I do minus 1 by alpha, that's why the sign has changed, d2, right? And how do we evaluate this? This we are evaluating from this guy, because we know what is the CDF of d1. The probability that d1 is less than something is 1 minus e to the power minus lambda 1 pi of that thing, which is p2 by p1 to the power minus 1 by alpha squared becomes minus 2 by alpha d2 squared. But this is not the end of the world, because we know that d2 itself is a random variable. So we have to take an expectation with respect to d2 to find out the total probability. Yes. So this becomes what? This becomes an integral of the expression, which is e to the minus lambda 1 pi p2 by p1 to the minus 2 by alpha, right? If I call d2 as x, so d2 takes in values x with a PDF, this, which is 2 lambda 2 pi x e to the power minus lambda 2 pi x square dx, where x itself, which means d2 itself, could have gone anywhere from 0 to infinite. The nearest point, of course, could have been anywhere between 0 and infinity, right? So this is something which you have to evaluate. Okay, use this evaluation would not necessarily need Wolfram alpha, because you would have already an x here and e to the power minus k x square there. So if you take this as t, x dx becomes dt and so on, right? So use those techniques which you have learned in class 11 and 12 to evaluate this, and we start our discussion on the next class at this point. Okay, and we will develop further theories based on this. We'll also be completing the remaining property that I had not discussed today, because I think I was more interested in showing this example. Okay, at this point I will share with you the quiz. Feel free to upload it try to upload it within let's say 5:30. Okay, in case you upload it beyond 5:30, I will deduct couple of marks from you. Okay, it's already 5 marks, the entire quiz. Okay, so I will share my screen now, and also I will be uploading it in the classroom page, and you have to upload your solutions in the classroom page. Okay, just 1 second. Okay, I think you should have it with you, and I will also upload the PDF version of it in the classroom right away. So it's just a simple question. I am here to answer your queries, and yeah, feel free to upload it in the classroom page.
So it is just one question with three parts. No.
Yeah, it's only one question with three parts. Yes. So I have again uploaded it in the classroom as well. You can download the PDF if you want from there.
So in the first part, can I leave it with the expression, or I have to go through the exact value?
No, it's fine to just give the expression. You can, I mean, of course, be sure that you know how it comes from. But for this quiz,
Yeah.
you don't need to give it.
Yes, sure.
Sir, for the third part, yeah, do we need to write the expression or do we need to calculate the entire expression? It's getting complicated.
So you need to calculate, right? Because I even don't know what the expression is. So it's a bit different from your nearest point distribution, right? It's the nearest point which is inside of A. Okay, there will be points which are nearer to you than A. They are not a part of this problem. This third question. Do you
Yeah,
get the point?
yes.
Yeah, got to calculate it. Okay, guys, I think I'll leave the meeting now in case there are no other doubts. I'll suggest that you start to upload it right now or within 5 minutes in order to avoid, let's say, last minute internet glitches. There's no excuse for any delay in uploading it. It's something which you can complete within 10 minutes. Yes, Bridges.
Sir, when can we get the solution?
I can discuss the solutions in the next class.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thanks, guys.